There's one editing style that will always be in demand for video editors, a timeless editing style that will always look good on YouTube, no matter what niche or what's trending. And if you've clicked on this video, you probably already know that this style is smooth editing, which is the foundation of any good edit. So today I'm going to show you how to master smooth animations in Premiere Pro so that you're absolutely flooded by clients looking for your sexy smooth animation style. If you're new here, my name is Joseph, and if you want to see my smooth editing, then I'm going to put some of it up here. And over the past 2 years, I've scaled my own editing business from $0 to $5,000 per month, all while still at school. So if you're interested in making a full-time income from video editing, then click the subscribe button. Before we go ahead and hop into Premiere Pro and I show you how to create smooth animations, first, you need to understand smooth animation theory. So let's start off by addressing the question, why are we using Premiere Pro? Though other professional softwares like DaVinci and Final Cut do allow you to adjust the keyframe velocity, I've just found it's way more difficult than in Premiere Pro. I actually used to use DaVinci Resolve, and in the edit tab thing, you could only slightly curve out the keyframes. And if you wanted full access to the velocity keyframe graph, you'd have to go digging into the Fusion tab, I think it's called, which took so much time. So I eventually caved in and bought a plugin that allowed you to do smooth animations in the edit tab. But this just got so inconvenient and I just got so sick of it that I switched to Premiere Pro, which eventually turned out to be one of the best decisions I ever made in my editing career. Because let me tell you, creating smooth animations in Premiere Pro could not be easier, even if you're a complete beginner. So let me show you how. Before we can create smooth animations, we just need to be able to animate very basically. And this comes down to something called keyframes. You heard me mention them earlier, but what exactly are they? A keyframe basically determines where an asset is at a specific moment in time. I've imported this picture of my face here to start with. So first we're going to go up to the effects panel, get a transform effect and drag it on top of our clip. So if we click this little button here next to the word position, it will create a keyframe. And this keyframe basically tells Premiere Pro that at this moment on the timeline, we want this picture of me in this position. Now here's the clever part. If we move a few seconds into the future and change one of these values here, Premiere Pro will automatically create another keyframe for us. Premiere Pro will fill in the blanks and it calculates where this picture needs to be in every single frame to get from the first keyframe to the second keyframe. So if we go back to the start and play it, we have our first animation. But how do we make this animation smooth? So if we click this little arrow here, it all comes down to this graph. It's called the velocity graph, and it's the key to making any animation smooth. This graph basically represents how fast the asset is moving. As we can see here, this line is just straight, so we call it a linear graph. And this means that it moves at the same speed from one point to the other, making it look kind of clunky. And we don't want this. So to change it, we grab these little blue handles here to make different shapes. And the shape of the curve depends on what movement we want the asset to do. Now, all movements can be categorized into one of these three categories: entry, intermediate, or exit. And all of these have their separate shaped curves to make them look the best. So we're going to work through these one by one. First, the entry curve. We use this when something's moving onto the screen. That's why it's called the entry curve. So let me show you what an entry curve looks like. So first we're going to go back to this first keyframe and then we're going to move it so my asset is off screen. Let's check where the second keyframe is. Let's move it to the middle. First, let's make the graph a bit bigger to make it easier to manipulate. Because I've already messed around with these, I'm going to right click on these, go temporal, interpolation and linear, just to give us a fresh start. You're going to want to grab the left handle, pull it down and fully to the left. Then grab the right handle, pull it down and fully to the left as well. You should be left with this shape. Now if we click play, we we have a smooth move into the middle of the screen. But what if we want to move this asset from this point of the screen to another point on the screen? This is where we use the intermediate curve. So first, let's drag on another transform effect. We'll add another position keyframe where it already is, where we want to start the animation. We'll scrub across a few seconds, and then let's move it up this time to about here. Now, like any other animation, the automatic one is just linear, which looks unsmooth and bad. So like last time, let's change the graph. But instead this time, we're going to pull the bezels down and to the middle. Same with this right one, down and to the middle. This is the intermediate graph. So if we play this, we have a smooth intermediate animation. Now finally, what if we want to move it off the screen? This is where we use the exit curve, obviously. So again, we'll drag on another transform effect onto our clip. We'll add a keyframe where it finished the previous animation, scrub forwards a few seconds, and then we'll move it off the screen. I think we should move it this way. And then I'm going to make them a bit closer just to make the animation a bit faster. At the moment, we have a linear graph, which, as we know, looks bad and clunky. The shape for the exit curve is kind of the same as the entry one, but the opposite way round. We get the left-hand keyframe, pull it down and fully to the right. Then we get the right keyframe and pull it down and fully to the right. We should be left with this shape, and now it looks like this. A smooth exit off the screen. A thing to note is that you can use these curves on any effect, whether it's a zoom, a rotation, literally anything. Just work out whether it's an entry, intermediate, or exit movement. Use the appropriate graph and it will look great. Now that you've got the fundamentals down, it's time for you to learn the final touches that will make it look extra silky smooth. First, and probably the most important thing, is to add motion blur. So let's go back to this first movement that we made. Expand out the transform effect and then scroll down to the shutter angle and change this figure up to 360. Now if we play this, it has that smooth motion blur, which makes it look so much better. The second tip is to make sure that each animation is on different transform effects, as we've been doing. Because look, let's say I disable these two, add another keyframe to this position here, and then move this up. As you can see, I have very little control over this graph here, and it will kind of just cut off the end of the last one. But if we put them on separate transform effects, all of these graphs are so much easier to manipulate and don't affect the previous animation. Another thing that you can do if you're using multiple transform effects is to make them overlap. Let's use these first two animations as an example. As you can see, the end of this animation is here. So if we move the first keyframe of the second animation before this one has ended, and remember to turn up the shutter angle to 360 for that lovely motion blur, the second one will start acting on it while the first already is, and gives us that lovely looking effect. Now you have everything you need to create smooth animations in Premiere Pro. My final piece of advice is just to practice. Try loads of different things out. Try adding in other assets, messing around with the curves and mixing up different effects. Literally just try anything until something looks good and sticks. Don't be scared of failing, because failure is just a part of finding success. Click the subscribe button and watch this video up here.